My name is Robert van der Peer. I studied printmaking in my undergraduate years at Art College in England, and fell in love with the medium and graduated in printmaking. Went on to do my master's at the Royal Academy in London, England, and a year with a master printmaker, German master printmaker in Minneapolis. And I came over from England, especially to set up a print shop in Kingston, Ontario at a college, and remained for 25 years. And after the program, things changed there, I should say. I tossed my office keys into Lake Ontario and sailed my schooner to the Maritimes, and that's how I arrived here. And that's what eventually brought me down to St Andrews. And I remember seeing Sunbury Shores Arts and Nature Centre from the outside, walking past it many times, and the windows were full of stuffed dead birds. So I thought, that's an oxymoron. This is a nature centre. And I was too scared to come in. I thought maybe it's some sort of Bible school, perhaps. But I eventually got the nerve up to come inside, and met the director, who was Tom Moffat at that time, and he showed me the two etching presses. And I said, look, this is my background. And they virtually chased me down the street and said, Robert, can you come back? Can you do some evening classes for us? And what can you do here? So I said, what I'll do is, if you can get the money, a grant, I'll set up a professional print shop for you. And that's when Fred Ross heard about it, and he was the very first artist to come and work with me. And we did 4 editions for him, and then Herschel Koschetsky joined in, and we've been printing for artists and working with students ever since. Another artist from Fredericton is Anne Manuel. She has a summer home here, and she works with me a lot. Very experimental and a charming person to work with. In fact, it was Anne who gave me, if I can remember the right word, the syncopal kick to start doing new work for an exhibition at Gallery Connection in Fredericton. So she's been very good in making me work. So,
What are the requirements to become a master printer?
First of all, you have to have your master's degree in printmaking. And then it's like an apprenticeship. You spend up to a year building up a portfolio, which is then reviewed by 2 other master printmakers, and they will say yay or nay, or this is what you should be doing. Well, coming from the Royal Academy, I already had the portfolio. So I just spent 2 months with the printmaker in Minneapolis. And he said, Robert, you've got it. So there we are. And I was teaching printmaking at the same time, so I had that advantage.
What about the history of printmaking itself? When did people start?
And it goes back, I think, to the early days of illustrating books. And it was a way, the only way they could actually show a flower, a person, or an object in a printed pamphlet or book form. And etching actually started with the armor makers in the medieval period, where they would actually engrave designs, unique family designs into the armor, and then they would take a rubbing from that, and that would be a proof that that belonged to that family, that design. And that's where we get the word proof from today. When we're actually printing, again, we'll say a copper plate. We run artist proofs initially to find out what's there. But so some of the terminology and words that we use today go way back in time.
So take me through the process of printmaking. You've decided basically what you want it to look like. How do you make it happen?
It depends on the technique. If I'm doing a lithograph, and lithograph is from the Greek word lithos, meaning stone. The images are printed from stone, and I would start out by making a drawing on the stone, and the stone's processed and then printed. Now, if it's an etching, it means I have to cover the plate with an acid resist and make the drawing through that resist. And that's when it disappears into the process and comes out later as the printed image on paper. So.
Excellent. And you can do all of that here in this studio?
Yes. We don't do lithography yet, but that's going to be coming in the future. We have stones, but we don't have the printing press. But we do have 2 etching presses. And perhaps I should state at this point that the print shop, I've been able to get it over the years to become green. So we're completely non-toxic. And so for young people, as for example the high school students, they come here and do printmaking and drawing and painting classes, and it's perfectly safe for them.
So tell me what it is that you love about the difference between printmaking and photocopying.
Photocopying in art has no meaning. Its value is to simply communicate a bit of information. And what do you do with that information? Or what do you do with that photocopy? Not much. But of course with original art, then you have something that is true and real, original, and it's a piece of work worth keeping. And it has value and will increase in value. But a photocopy, no, doesn't work. Let's go back to the process of etching, which I've been majoring in the last few years, because it's a much more casual process. But traditionally, using toxic materials, the copper plates had to be etched in nitric acid. That requires fume hoods, safety masks and goggles and so on. Well, these days, we don't use anything like that at all. And so when I mentioned the print shop is now green, that means that there's no acids that are corrosive to us or to anything organic. There are no fumes coming off the plate, and that is part of how it's now safe for young people and older people to work with. And some of the materials that we use these days, which would have been toxic in the past, an example would be beeswax and asphaltum, that had to be heated and, to be applied to the plate. Well, of course, asphaltum is cancer-causing. And today, my substitute for those that acid resist is India ink and Future floor wax. And it works beautifully. So the new materials that I've developed and the chemistry I've been experimenting with, that it's changed the medium completely. Etching is nothing like what it used to be in the past. That it's possible now to do continuous tone washes. So a painter can use or adopt a painterly technique, especially a person that works in watercolor. They can actually have imagery on plates now that are very similar to watercolor. So to me, it's a complete renaissance and rebirth of an old, dying process. And in fact, some of the old printmakers are old and dying as well. And some of them quit completely, and they're coming back to it slowly now. And the biggest centre in the world right now, I believe, is in Edinburgh, in Scotland. And they finally admitted where they got their ideas from, and they said, Canadian printmakers. So it came from us, yeah. And I've adopted some of the techniques, but the techniques we do use here, I've actually developed myself. And if people want to see them, they can just go on to www.sunburyshores.org on our website, and there's a paper that's published. It still needs editing, but I did it very quickly just to make sure I have a copyright on it. And the title actually is called Printmaker as Alchemist. So that's my touch of humour. But the techniques are in there, and it's for everybody to use and develop as well. And that's probably another aspect of the print shop, is that whenever I offer a workshop, somebody also offers another tip. So it's a growing process, and it's not just entirely mine. Other people contribute, and I'm very grateful for that, and printmaking is too. Yeah.
So how can it be an old and dying art if people are out there taking workshops and contributing?
Well, the old art has died. That comes round in circle now to the new techniques. So people can continue producing their work and produce work, as I said earlier, that could not have been done before in the old techniques. It's the Renaissance, we're in the middle of it right now. So, yeah.
And you teach it to lots of different young people. Tell me a little bit about doing that.
High school students. I just finished teaching, it's a mixture of grade 11, grade 12 from Sir James Dunn Academy. And they were doing etchings, lino cuts, and monoprints, blind embossing, a whole variety of different techniques. They do very well. In fact, we had an exhibition in this very studio for them, and that's becoming an annual affair. This is the second year we've done it, and there's more money and funding becoming available. And as far as I know, I'll be teaching grade 11 and separately grade 12, a complete credit course in painting, drawing, printmaking, and so on. So that's another part of the Renaissance too, for us in St Andrews. Yeah.
And so when you're working with kids of that age who are completely of the computer age, how does printmaking affect them?
Can I tell you a funny story? Last year I was showing colour slides. I was doing a bit of colour theory with them. And some of them started to chuckle, not in a rude way. And I said, well, why are you laughing? And they said, what are you showing us? And they said, these are colour slides. And it suddenly dawned on me, they'd never seen them before. It's PowerPoint projection for them. And so I handed the slides around, and they looked at them and they said, they're little pictures. like this. So I suddenly realized that, that link from the past to their present. But when it comes to printmaking, no. They treat it in a fairly classical way, as they would a drawing. Now, I don't know if modern technology has made painting and drawing redundant, because it's a hands-on thing, and it's something you can do outside. I think you'd be hard-pressed to do that with a computer, would you not? But there is room for both, and especially, maybe I should mention about the present show, there's David Ogilvy, photographer. His work, it's not colour photographs, but it's all modern printing techniques. There's no chemistry involved at all, so it's the modern camera, the computer enhancement of colour. That's what I really enjoy about modern technology. In printmaking, I'm not sure yet if it can affect it or have an influence or an improvement, is what I'd be looking for. So it's, as I said, it's a hands-on medium, and I'm not sure, but it'll happen. Something will happen. It's not for me to do, though, because I'm old, and it's for the young people. It's their age. Technology is their medium, and I hope, well, they'll flourish with that medium and turn it into an art form of some kind if they're not doing it already, and I'm sure they should be or would be. I'm ready to print. It's a rather beautiful plate. It's the property of J. Reamer, and it is actually an original Sir Edwin Landseer etching, which he made in the year 1821. He was a 19-year-old student at the Royal Academy, where I did my masters, as mentioned earlier, and I'm going to show you how that plate can be printed. But prior to that, I want to get back to the thoughts of becoming green in the print shop, and these are the materials that would have been used and considered to be the toxic materials. That is beeswax and asphaltum. Would have to be heated to apply it, or to soften it, to apply it to a plate, applied usually with a pigskin dabber like this. Well, of course, inhaling the hot asphaltum is extremely bad for your health. It is cancer causing. So I only have those as I call them my museum piece. And the substitute for that, which I've developed, is simply a mixture of India ink and future floor wax. And that creates an acid resist. And I have an example of a plate that is already coated. There it is. And once the coating is dry, all the artist needs to do is simply draw through that coating, exposing the copper. And when that plate is submerged into the etchant, then the etchant can only etch where the drawing has been made. And that's how it becomes incised into the plate. And moving back to this plate here, I can actually feel the incisions. Now, it's the incisions that actually hold the ink, and it's called intaglio printing. It's a lovely Italian word with a soft G, intaglio, which means roughly incision. And so these incisions will hold the ink, and I'm just about to show how that is done. I have behind me a paper soaking sink. Now, I've just put a piece of printing paper into the damping sink to soak, because we need to soften the fibers of the paper. And I'm going to ink this plate. It's a very simple process. And I'm using a cardboard applicator that forces the ink down into the image. There, that's almost ready. Then I remove the surplus ink using tarlatan. This is the wiping fabric. And at this point I'm modifying the ink on the surface. And you can begin to see how the image is holding the ink. This is the part that takes a lot of practice over the years. And this plate will now be taken over and put onto the printing press bed. I'm just placing the etching plate on the press bed, and then I need to get my little piece of paper that I've been soaking and blot that, and then we can make a print. Just returning here with my piece of paper that I've soaked and blotted, and we're about to make a print. These felts help to push the paper down into the plate, into the intaglio ink holding areas, and to extract the ink. Voila, that is the print. It's a fascinating image too, isn't it? The, what's on the road sign? So where the horse is going? They're off to the knacker's yard. So that was Edwin Landseer's sense of humour as a 19-year-old art student at the Royal Academy. And he has initialed the plate, and the date is actually in this bottom corner here, just there. And so if I want to make another print, I just re-ink the plate, as I've just shown, and run more paper through the press. And every print that comes off that plate is actually an original Sir Edwin Landseer image. I have some examples of another etching and a lithograph to show you. The reason I'm putting my gloves on is because, for conservation reasons, and paper being very, very absorbent, that they should never be handled because there could be soil, oil, or anything transferred to the paper. This is an etching. It's very easy to identify because there is the emboss in the paper of the plate, as you saw with the Edwin Landseer plate being printed. This is called Albion Mist, and it's using traditional printmaking techniques. And you can see that in this particular etching that any tonal changes are done in sequential steps. And there's always an edge to the tonal changes. And while I'm talking about that, I can also then show this example here of one of the new techniques, the non-toxic techniques in printmaking, where there is continuous tone, and even the washes, well, some of them are fairly transparent. So that's the difference between the old technique and the new, and this is a very good example, I think, although it's a test plate, of the advantages of becoming non-toxic and how it has completely changed the medium. These two do not really relate to each other at all. And here I have an example of a lithograph printed from lithographic limestone, which comes only from Bavaria. And you can see with this here the characteristics of the pencil and crayon drawing. There are tonal washes up here, but they're not as fine as the non-toxic techniques. But that is a lithograph, and it's quite different, actually very different in characteristics in terms of the image making, very, very different from the etching. And this sample here does show the very old style of drawing, and that is a lithograph, again printed from lithographic limestone, but it's very traditional in terms of its aesthetic value. But the beauty here, apart from just the drawing, is the fact that it emits its own light source. It just glows in the highlights. It's made by one of my students many years back. She'd found a photograph of her great-grandmother and decided it had to be a subject for her to treat, with a great deal of affection too. This is an original Fred Ross etching. It's one of 4 editions that we printed for him when the print shop first opened in 1998. It's a delightful little piece, and it has a charming history because when Fred had the plate in his pocket, it travelled around with him quite a bit, and so it has picked up minute little scratches. And we decided to print the edition even though the scratches were etched in the plate, because it was part of the time that the plate spent in Fred's pocket, as I was saying. You'll also notice too, at the very bottom here, that's the chop for our print shop here in Sunbury Shores. And also there's a tiny little chop down here as well, which is my master printmaker's chop. And that shows where the print was printed and also who did the printing. Another print I have here is of Herschel Koschetsky. And it's a studio interior. If I can get into this. And that was Herschel's very first etching, printed in the print shop here. It's a very mysterious looking piece because of the side lighting. Makes it very theatrical. And there's that ghost-like face almost in the center.
So will every etching for sale have the 2 chops on it?
Yes, yes. And as well as the chops, there is an edition record kept, identifying the type of paper, ink, image size, everything that's important about the individual print that is made in the edition. And while I'm talking about print shops, as far as I know, working on the internet, there's only 11 print shops in Canada. And there's one, St Michael's print shop in St John's, Newfoundland. There's a little print studio in Moncton called Imago, but they don't have a master printmaker. And there's us here in St Andrews, and we're the only 3 in the entire Maritimes. In fact, I think there's only 3 master printmakers in the entire Maritimes as well. But to become a print shop, you have to have a master printmaker in residence. If you don't, you become simply a studio. It shouldn't diminish it at all. Especially Imago in Moncton, they're wonderful people, and they have a nice little setup, and they really are devoted to their art, their craft.
What would you like to see happen in this studio in the next 10 years?
Next 10 years? First of all, I'd still like to be alive. And the way things are going, they won't allow me to retire. So I'll be still here working, and I hope the print shop will expand. And I'd love to see more people coming in, especially younger people, coming in to use the facility and explore the medium.